1 minute. Good morning everyone, welcome to our September meeting. Members in attendance, officers in attendance. Do we have any apologies or leaves of absence? No? Could everyone be upstanding please? I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. And while we're standing, we'll observe a minute's silence as a mark of respect for the members of our community who have recently passed. We wish their family and friends peace and comfort during this challenging time. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Do we have declarations of any material personal interest or conflicts of interest by councillors or senior officers? No? Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes. Could we have a mover for the confirmation of the August minutes? Councillor Cardew, seconded Councillor Wilts. Are there any matters regarding the accuracy around these minutes? Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 7, business arising actions out of the minutes. Any councillors wish to? Yes, Councillor Clifton.
Mr. Mayor, through the chair to the CEO, we have during this meeting we became a Queensland a resilient environment council. I can't find it here to say the name properly. Is there any developments where we're going to have discussions in the course of time with officers from the appropriate departments? Has anything developed along that line?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Councillor Clifton. I would have to defer to Tudor as the manager for that area, and fortunately he's sitting right there.
Thank you, Bob. Through the chair, we have been in discussions with LGAQ with regards to commencing this process. I had an email which about yesterday proposing a date for a workshop with councillors in order to do the face-to-face briefing, which is the first step of this process. And once we have the dates confirmed, we will put it in the calendar. We will have the face-to-face briefing, and then we will work further dates from there. So that's basically the starting point of this process.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judith.
Any other business arising out of the minutes? Thank you, councillors. We have no item 8, no deputations and delegations, no mayoral minute. To item 10. 10.1, Lions Club of Malanda Inc. request to waive planning and application fees for Brown Street, Malanda. Could I have a councillor move that we open this report for discussion? Councillor Bilney, seconder. Councillor Cardew. I'll go to you, Councillor Bilney, if that's okay.
Yes, through the chair. I will be proposing an alternate motion in the business without notice, which will further address this request for financial assistance.
And do you think, Councillor Bilney, that alternative motion replaces the motion that we've got in this report?
Yes.
Would anyone else like to talk to this? Councillor Cardew?
Rob, can that alternate motion be put up in this? If we don't accept the officer's recommendation, can we have another recommendation there to vote on in this?
Yeah, I'll defer that to the CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Under our standing orders, councillors, any amendment to a motion can't contradict the original recommendation. I've seen Councillor Bilney's alternative, and it would be possibly contradicting this one. I believe the preferred course of action is to deal with this and then deal with the alternative issue in business without notice. Simply because this one's dealing with planning application fees, and Councillor Bilney's alternative is talking about rates issues. So I think they're quite two distinct issues, even though they may have a similar monetary effect on the Malanda Lions.
Councillor Hodge?
Through you, Mr Mayor, would it be pertinent to just make a motion that we note this report?
I'm not sure whether we can, given that we've got an officer's recommendation, I think we need to, I'll take advice from the CEO, we need to move the officer's recommendation and see whether it's supported.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, my view is that the recommendation is seeking direction and a decision from council, and noting will not provide any decision.
Councillor Clifton?
Yeah, given that Councillor Bilney is putting up an alternative motion, although it's not completely alternative, and I've not seen it, I feel powerless to vote on either of them at this stage, because I may not like his motion, at which time I've lost the ability to talk to this motion. I don't know, it's a procedural impasse from my perspective. So I don't know how to resolve that.
Okay. Could I ask Councillor Bilney to talk to his alternative motion, Mr CEO? Is that appropriate, or?
Mr Mayor, I think in the course of discussion on this recommendation, if Councillor Bilney wants to flag without actually moving the alternative, then I think that's appropriate for a discussion, open discussion.
Councillor Bilney?
Yep, through the chair. The proposal or amended motion that I would be presenting to council for consideration is that the council provide a concession to the Malanda Lions Club as follows. That it would be a provision of concession of 3 by $600 lots of the general rate, totalling $1,800. Provide a concession of 3 times the $150 utilities rate, totalling $450. And so the total there is $2,250 in concessions from the general and utilities rate rather than planning fees.
And Councillor Bilney, is that alternative motion, is that a one-off?
Yes, it will be. I intend to talk through what the Malanda Lions Club do for the community and the reasoning why I'm asking for this consideration from council.
And why is this one preferred to the officer's recommendation?
Currently, the Lions Club have no ability to apply for concessional funding opportunities through council. Also, they have no support from state or federal governments other than some forms of grant opportunities. We had an issue where council's concessional policy doesn't allow for the club to make application. We investigated changing the interpretation of that policy to allow them to apply for funding concessions, but by doing that it opened up potential claims of up to approximately $90,000 if we amended the policy. The intent was not to cause damage to our budget, it was to afford the Lions Club the same opportunities as any other non-for-profit organisation. So that was the intent.
Okay. Councillor Hodge?
Mr Mayor, would it be pertinent to amend the recommendation here, so we don't have to go through this process of defeating this one, bringing that one up? We could amend the officer's recommendation to grant the applicant's application's request for the amount of $2,150, whatever the amount is.
Yeah, look, my concern is that the officer's recommendation is in the planning domain, and Councillor Bilney's alternative is in the rates domain. So I'm not sure whether that fits. I'll take some guidance from the CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That was my original advice to Councillor Billy. I had concerns about mixing and matching planning fees with rates because they are two quite distinct issues. Having said that, I will say that it's certainly open to council in dealing with this recommendation to actually approve their request to waive the planning application fees. That's an option for council to consider, and that may make Councillor Bilney's further flagged motion redundant, potentially.
Councillors? Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, look, I agree with Bob. I think that if we're going to provide any sort of waiver of fees or give some sort of concessional funding to the Malanda Lions, I think we deal with it now and just reduce the application fee from $2,450 to whatever the difference is between. Yeah, and that'll be the application fee for the planning application, whatever remains.
So are you proposing an amendment to the motion, Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, I can put that up as an amendment to the officer's recommendation.
Okay, we'll need to.
Through.
Yes, Councillor Wilkes.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. My only concern with amending the officer's recommendation is the report is based on that recommendation, and if we're amending the officer's recommendation, we're basically making the contents of that report invalid to that recommendation.
Councillor Clifton.
Through the Mayor, basically to the CEO for advice, what is the effect of passing, the practical effect of passing this motion and the subsequent motion?
The practical effect, and I haven't looked at all the figures, but there's a benefit to Malanda Lions. It's just how that benefit is delivered, and whether it's in terms of a waived planning application fee or reduced rates.
But sorry, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify my mind, the second motion is a one-off.
That's my understanding, Councillor Clifton.
Councillor Hodge.
Just to get this sort of straight, if we pass this now, the council refuse the application's request to waive the planning fees, right? That cannot be amended today. If Councillor Bilney says, I want to change that in notice without motion, to say we are going to give it. So,
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think I can address that. We're actually dealing with two different issues, Councillor Hodge. This one is the planning application fee. Councillor Bilney's proposed motion for business without notice deals with rates concessions, so they are two distinct issues, and I think can legitimately be raised in business without notice.
Okay.
Councillor Wills.
Through the chair to the CEO, could then this be resolved now? If Councillor Bilney brings it up in business without notice, can a decision be made on that today, or would that have to come back?
That's a motion through you, Mr Mayor. It's open to council again, whether you want to report on things. That's always the risk with motions without notice, is that you don't necessarily have the supporting information to make a decision. However, it is open to council to refuse this request or vote on this recommendation. If it's lost, it's open to council to actually put up another motion to waive the planning application fees, and I think that would be sufficient without mentioning an amount in there.
Thank you.
Councillor Bilney, could you just explain one more time why your alternative motion is your preferred motion?
Through the chair, would you like me to read out a little document that I've
Yes,
compiled
yes,
to support? Okay, by way of brief background, the Lions Club over the years have built and operate 15 units in Malanda. This has been achieved through community fundraising and borrowings from bank, with the units used as security for the loans. Currently, no assistance is provided by TRC through rate reductions or concessions. In addition, they receive no state or federal funding apart from grant opportunities as they present themselves. A charter of intent has been provided to me, and it reads: the Lions Club of Malanda, as one of its community projects, operate 15 accommodation units in the town of Malanda for persons on the aged pension. The club has plans to construct 3 additional units in Malanda to meet current and future demands. Malanda Lions is a registered charity and a not-for-profit organisation. All units are occupied by people on the aged pension. Some are also disabled. Majority are single people. Tenants must be on the aged pension when applying for a unit, with preference given to locals. Exception being where emergency housing, where preference is taken. There is no means test for incoming tenants. All are charged the same rent for that complex. As a private landlord, tenants are able to apply for Commonwealth rent subsidies. At this time, club always has a long client base on the waiting list. The majority of tenants receive some assistance from care organisations such as Radcare, Echo and Meals and Wheels. As a service club, all money raised from the units goes back into the units. New units are funded by way of bank loans and fundraising is undertaken by Lions Club members. The Lions are a non-for-profit charity organisation who are filling a void not provided for by any levels of government. They concentrate solely on aged pensioners who, in essence themselves, could be considered vulnerable. They are not an aged care provider. However, it could be suggested that they are first-run provider, and that it's doctors who initiate the decision on next stage of care, i.e. going to Ozcare or Carinya or the like. The club has paid $32,750 in rates last year, with further increases in rate revenue to occur as additional stage units are built. 1/3 of their income generated is paid to TRC in the form of rates. It has been estimated that a further $78,000 in headwork charges will be paid over the next 3 years as the project is fully developed. Further rate revenue will also be generated accordingly. A review was undertaken on the 2021 concessions policy to see if the wording could be amended so that Malanda Lions were afforded the same opportunities as any other non-for-profit organisation. However, in doing this, potentially open up a claim in excess of $90,000 if those who qualified made a claim. The intent was not to create an adverse impact on the budget. Malanda Lions acknowledged and accepted this for the greater benefit of the community. In my view, the club should be commended on their commitment to the community and particularly the aged sector, which, as we all know, is becoming a substantial issue in the years to come. They are providing and filling a void in this area, and in my view, we should be encouraging and supporting where we can.
Councillor, sorry, I'll come to you, Councillor Clifton. Can you just clarify why your alternative motion is referred to the officer's recommendation?
The CEO rightly stated that these are planning fees and a real cost to officers in the assessment. I consider this as a once-off that could be funded through the rates concession as a once-off.
So you're saying that it's easier for council to give the rates concession as opposed to the planning application?
Look, as I understand, there's different buckets of money where they go into. This alternate closely aligns to what I believe they haven't been able to claim in the past through the concessions policy.
Councillor Clifton?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So, just listening to Councillor Bildy, I see it as a decision relating to rates on the one hand, planning application fees on the other. Planning application fees, as I understand it, are sort of one-off fees when the project's being undertaken. Rates go on forever. I personally feel that it's not good long-term policy to interfere with rates. It opens up a whole secret garden of what people may take in the future, and so I'm more drawn to the idea of waiving a planning application fee of $2,450 because it is only a one-off thing. Sure, planning application fee waivers, as far as in the short time that I've been a councillor, are requested by almost everybody. We're used to that. I don't like the idea of interfering with rates.
Thank you, Councillor Clifton. Councillor Hodge?
I totally agree.
Councillors, would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation, or have we exhausted the discussion? Or would anyone like Councillor Kaji?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'd like to amend the officer's recommendation.
You'd like to amend the officer's
Yeah.
recommendation?
To waive the planning application fee.
Just through.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. An amendment can't go against the intent of the original motion. So I think there's two ways that council can deal with this. One is to ask for a mover and a seconder. If there's no mover and seconder, the motion is lost, and then a new motion can be put up approving the applicant's request to waive the planning application fees, full stop. And I think that's a cleaner and neater way, rather than trying to amend something and going against the intent, which in our standing orders you cannot do.
Does everyone understand that?
Yes.
So, do we have a mover for the officer's recommendation? We have no mover for the officer's recommendation. So, do we have an alternative?
A new motion.
A new motion? Do we have a new motion? With some? Councillor Billey?
Yes, I'd like to move a motion that we waive the applicant's planning application fees.
Okay, can we get that printed up? Thanks, Amanda. Okay, so the motion is, can you read it out please, Amanda, when you're ready?
I'll read that out, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, thank you.
And full stop after the new motion, through you, Mr Mayor and councillors, is that council approve the applicant's request to waive planning application fees. And those, obviously those fees and the details are recorded in the report.
Through the CEO, should we include that figure in there, CEO, the 2450?
I think the wording there is sufficient, Mr Mayor.
I'll second the motion.
So Councillor Billney has moved the new motion. Councillor Hodge has seconded the new motion. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 10.2, M&L Datools. Request for payment plan for infrastructure charges, secondary dwelling, 525 Pyramon Road, Pyramon. Do we have a councillor who would like to open this report for discussion? Councillor Clifton. Seconder, Councillor Hodge. Councillor Clifton, would you like to talk to that?
No, I think the officer's recommendations are obvious. There appears to be no extra cost to council except potential of not receiving funds when there's a lack of, and we're not getting interest for those or being able to use those funds when interest rates are so low. So I have nothing else to say except to support the application.
Thank
the
you.
Recommendation, sorry.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to talk to this one?
Just
Councillor Wilson.
Mayor, yeah, there are other payment installation plans in place, and I don't see there's anything dramatically different from any of those, so I'm in full support of the recommendation.
Thank you. If councillors no longer wish to discuss it, would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Wills, moving. Councillor Clifton, seconding. Those in favour? Carried, thank you. Item 10.3, G&M Road Proprietary Limited request to waive all infrastructure charges reconfiguring a lot, one lot into two lots, 3 to 5 Short Street, Youngborough. Could I have a mover to open this report for discussion? Councillor Cardew, to seconder. Councillor Clifton, those in favour? Councillor Cardew?
Look, I support the officer's recommendation. don't think we should be waiving infrastructure charges for this sort of development.
Any other councillors like to talk to this one? Councillor Hodge?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we should be changing or waiving any fees on infrastructure charges, so I fully support the recommendation.
Would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Cardew moving the officer's recommendation. Seconder. Councillor Wills. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 11.1, Tableland Smart Community Strategy. Could I have a officer to move that we open this report for discussion? Councillor Cardew, seconded Councillor Bilney. Those in favour? Thank you. Councillor Cardew.
I won't be supporting the officer's recommendation in this instance. I've read the Tableland Smart Community Roadmap as presented. I don't think we should be adopting that roadmap at this point in time, given that we're about to engage a community advisory group, and I would like that group to be able to look at this document prior to us endorsing it, because this group, this advisory group, may not align to this document, and we'd only be endorsing something that we wouldn't be able to use. So I won't be supporting. I will be more favourable to parking this until the community advisory group is formed and have a chance to look at this document and the process what it talks about, and then move on from there.
Councillors, anyone else like to talk to this one? Councillor Wills.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. If you look at the officer's recommendation, all we're doing is endorsing the roadmap that currently exists, and there's a progress review to be undertaken after 2 years. Like, we're not committed to undertaking any course of action at all. It's just that we would be endorsing what is already done, with the ability, as Councillor Cardew has said, we can refer to this roadmap with the new community group. So for me, it's a follow-on that we actually adopt the officer's recommendation, and that the matter just be parked. There's a progress review to be undertaken after 2 years. If it's determined over a period of time that it's not to where we believe we should be going, well, we can revisit that. But for now, for me at least, I would support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Clifton.
I won't be supporting it. I note in the executive summary the phrase, a smart community advisory group will be formed connecting the council with the community to guide the delivery of the roadmap. As Councillor Cardew has already said, we are in the process of establishing a committee of our own choice in relation to these matters in terms of economic development and of which, you know, smart community aspects will undoubtedly emerge. So I'm in favour of that community taking the run, and not that group taking the run, and and I'm not in favour of a smart community advisory group being formed at this stage.
Thanks, Councillor Clifton. Could I just go to the General Manager? Thanks, Hilary.
Thanks, through the Mayor. If I could just clarify, the group that Council has already endorsed forming is in fact this Smart Community Advisory Group. So that is the group that is being formed, and the intent of that group is to connect with the community on the delivery of the roadmap. So it's all actually part of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Those two things are actually aligned. The intent of the group is to then continue to work with the community and local business who have informed the development of the roadmap. So engagement with those groups to form the roadmap, Smart Community Advisory Group then formed to continue those conversations with the community. Again, not committing any budget or time from council's perspective, but to work with the community to consider some of the options identified in the roadmap as potentials in the future.
Councillor Clifton?
If I may, through the chair, to General Manager, I note that there's no cost. What about the cost of, what do you envisage in terms of officer time if the Smart Community Advisory Group was formed and this was began to deliver? What do you expect in terms of officer time?
I can't comment on what time might be involved in meetings associated with the advisory group. I would anticipate that it would be negligible and part of our business as usual activity as these community and advisory groups are. There is no commitment from council to be delivering any of these things. So,
if I just make up, but if in the way of things, the reality of things, will it be delivered if council doesn't take a leading role in assisting the delivery?
So just to be clear, there's actually no delivery commitments here. And the only recommendation is that the report be adopted and that it be reviewed in 2 years' time to consider relevance and what, if anything, has occurred. So there is no, this is not a decision to commit any council resources to actively deliver anything under the roadmap, and the involvement of council officers in the advisory group is the normal business of council.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Hilary. Thanks. So, my understanding is that council received funding to do this, prepare this document. If council was to not endorse the document today, are there any implications for the funding? Given that we receive funding, are there implications if we don't endorse it?
Apologies, Mayor, I'm not, I don't feel confident in saying categorically either way. Certainly funding was availed to undertake this activity, and a consultant engaged with that funding to produce the report. I can't say specifically whether if council chose not to endorse the report, that would have an impact on acquittal of the funding. I'd need to actually have a look at the funding agreement to be sure about that. Certainly the deliverable needs to occur, and essentially has occurred, but I couldn't advise specifically on that.
Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, I just want to reaffirm my position. If we don't support this document today and park it up, it will allow the new advisory committee to assess it and let them have input into the direction that we should be going with our economic development strategy. I don't think adopting a document of this nature today serves any purpose when we don't have an advisory committee set up yet, and this document may not be what they think we should be doing going forward. So I note in the document that there was $20,000 of funding made available for an external consultant to put this together. I also note in the document that they did an online survey which received 69 replies. And I also note in there that our population is 25,500 people. So a survey result of 69 out of 25,000 population equates to less than 0.3% of our population responding to that survey. So I don't believe that we should be adopting this document as presented because of those reasons. And I'd like to be able to let the new advisory committee look at this and see whether they think this is a worthwhile document to be endorsed as a strategy in our economic development moving forward.
Councillor Hayden?
So to me, 25,000 population actually includes children who probably would have never got on there and done the survey anyway. So you probably need to take them out of the equation. And no matter how many surveys the council have done over the last 12 years, you're flat out getting 200 people to answer to them. So to me, I didn't think it was too bad of a response really.
Thanks, Councillor Hayden. Councillors? Would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Hayden is moving. Councillor Wilts is seconding. Those in favour? That's 1, 2, 3. Councillor Hayden, Bilney and Wilts for. Those against? So the motion's defeated. Yes. So would any councillors like their vote recorded in the minutes? Yes, so Councillor Hodge, Councillor Clifton. Okay, thank you. Item 11.2, Local Government Association of Queensland Annual Conference 2020. Councillors, would we like to open this one for discussion, or would we also have the option here, we may just want to go straight to the officer's recommendation? I'll leave that open to councillors to decide. Councillor Hodge?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation. I don't think there might be just need to discuss it. But
Okay. Do we have a seconder for the officer's recommendation? So Councillor Clifton. I actually have a question for perhaps the CEO. I note that Councillor Clifton and Councillor Cardew and myself are the voting delegates for the conference. In the event that one of us didn't attend the conference, is it wise for us to appoint a third person who's attending the conference, who could be a proxy for if one of us was to miss the conference? Is that appropriate?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, there's processes for dealing with that in the event of an unexpected absence.
Yeah.
So we can deal with that as a procedural issue with the.
It can be done even after we've passed a motion with just the two of us?
Yes. The main principle is that council is entitled to 2 votes.
Right, okay, good. All right, councillors, are there any more discussion or questions on this one? So those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Thank you. Um, 11.3, Local Government Regulations 2012, Delegation of Statutory Powers. Could I have an officer to move this report to be open for discussion? Councillor Hodge. Seconder. Councillor Wilts. Could we ask the CEO to talk to this one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council was, as you're aware, there's a number of changes to the Local Government Act and Local Government Regulation coming into force. The full details of those we're still working through, and I note this morning I've received a further email from the department outlining some of the intended changes. So all this amendment to the instrument of delegation does is pick up some early ones of those changes, and there'll be more coming in the coming month or two. Let me get the page numbers right, page 93 on my copy, or page 4 of 6 on the attachment, outlines some of the requirements for notifying the community about local government meetings, and just the commencement date for some further changes on page 6 of 6. So they're fairly inconsequential changes at the moment, but there will be some further changes coming, as I said, in the next month or two.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Hodge?
There was one point that I wanted to raise was in regards to sale of land for overdue rates, where the delegation was going to the CEO to set the reserve price. After looking at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because that is, I just asked Bob, I think that's set by regulation anyway. I think it says it's either the reserve price is either set by the market value or the higher of the rates outstanding, or the unapproved value. So that's set by regulation anyway. So it's I'm fine with it.
For you, Mr. Mayor, if I could just clarify delegations in generally, in the particular power Councillor Hodge is talking about is on page 2 of 6 of the attachment, under subsection 143(1), and it says power to set a reserve price for the auction. Generally with delegations, they're made for administrative efficiency. Otherwise, council would be dealing with probably 1,000 agenda items every month. However, the delegation doesn't mean that it has to be exercised by the CEO, for example. And in that instrument that you have before you, you can see there's a Schedule 2, limitations to the exercise of power, and there's 9 limitations there that if I feel that any of those limitations are compromised or come into force, then I would not make that decision. It would be referred back to council. And council can at any time elect that it wants to make the decision and request a report, rather than the CEO or another officer exercising the delegation. So I guess the important point of that is that the ultimate power always sits around this table, not with officers.
Thank you. Councillors, any further discussion on this one? Would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Wills, seconded Councillor Hayden. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 12.1, Financial Report, August 2020. Could I have a councillor move that this be open? Councillor Bilney, seconded. Councillor Wilkes. Thank you. Councillor Bilney, would you like to talk? Or?
Yes, through the chair. Just noting that the financial side of the organisation is heading in the desired direction. So that's a credit to the finance team under General Manager Hillary's tutelage. So yes, just want to congratulate them so far. It's an ongoing work in progress though.
Thank you. Councillors, questions? Councillor Hodge, then Councillor Clifton.
Yeah, just to the capital side of it, can I just get an update from probably Mark, I guess, about what projects have been finished now up to date on our capital side of it?
Through the chair, thank you very much for that question. That's a very broad question that I didn't necessarily prepare for. Where do I start?
Well, I think, Mr. Mayor, because it is such a broad question, it's a difficult one to answer without any preparation, that I think the better course of action for those sorts of questions is to take it on notice.
Yep.
And provide a response to councillors in due course.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
We can do that, Councillor Hodge, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. Councillor Clifton.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to see the full-time equivalent employee totals included in subsequent reports. If that, one of the things I've noticed from other reports is that in fact our employment totals at the moment are the highest they have been for at least 3 years. At a time that we are we're trying to reduce our wage and salary costs. In fact, our full-time equivalent figures today are higher than they were at the 30th of June. So I'm saying those so that as a monitoring device, that's an open and public monitoring device, I think those figures should be added to our financial reports from now on.
Hilary, could I ask you for if that's achievable?
Certainly,
we can add that level of detail in.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, absolutely, we can include that level of detail, and probably a more useful for the type of measurement that Councillor Clifton is speaking of. It might be more useful to actually look at employees rather than full-time equivalent hours, which is a calculation and based on a number of things. And the fact that it's higher now than it was at another point does not mean it's the highest it's ever been, because those, as it is a calculation, it actually fluctuates quite significantly. So it might be useful to include both the full-time equivalent calculation and also headcount numbers, and that might give a better picture of the information that Councillor Clifton's looking for.
Does that sound appropriate, Councillor Clifton?
It sounds good to me.
Yep.
Thanks, Hilary.
Councillor Clifton again?
I have, in our annual report, which is in draft form now, and so therefore it's potentially inconclusive, there is a requirement to have what's called a long-term financial sustainability statement. They measure the operating surplus, they measure the asset sustainability ratio, and they register the net financial liability ratios with a small explanation. I'd like to see those, because they are a requirement, I'd like to see those included in our monthly reporting systems. Otherwise, so we can see the continual progress of how these things are going. In the real world, our asset financial liabilities ratio is doing quite well. Our asset sustainability ratio is doing very well, and our operating surplus ratio is minus, currently at the 30th of June was minus 6.4 odd, which means that we are spending more than we are in fact earning. And this is because of deficits that have been inherited from the previous year. We need to keep a really tight, close eye on that particular ratio to ensure that we bring it back to the positive. We are below the benchmark levels. So I would like to see that included in each one of our monthly reports.
Through the General Manager, are those requests possible?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, anything is possible. We can certainly report those ratios. I guess I'd just like to point out that reporting of ratios does not, ratios reflect a result, they don't deliver a result. So I just wanted to be clear about that. And also, some of those ratios are quite volatile, especially the asset type ratios, depending on where we are in our asset program. So certainly those numbers can be included, but we're likely to see a lot of up and down movement because it just depends where we are in terms of capitalisation of projects. So that's why typically those types of ratios are reported annually, because the data is quite up and down. So, but certainly we can include them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors? Councillor Wills?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, just in respect to attachment 3, which has direct correlation with our procurement policy. It relates to local spend via purchase orders and orders raised for non-local suppliers. I've undertaken a fairly high level look at that, and thank you for the report as it is. I think it's very important that we continue to just have a bit of a high level monitor of the purchasing of non-local supplies. And with this particular month, it's very pleasing to see that there's good explanation as to why things weren't able to be purchased locally. And yeah, I'd just like to see that just continue to be part of the report so that we can have a bit of a look at that.
Yes, and I concur with Councillor Wills on that. That's great. We appreciate that type of information. And through the General Manager, I see that we've got a couple of parcels of land there in Mount Garnet as part of the motion as well. Could you just explain the history of that and how they've ended up here?
Certainly, thank you, Mr Mayor. The two parcels of land that the resolution refers to were 2 blocks which were originally put up for sale at auction for recovery of outstanding rate debt last year, and they were both passed in at auction and there were no bidders at all, so there was no opportunity for sale. And as under legislation, that means that the title of those properties then move to us, and that process is quite a lengthy one to go through, and that's been finalised now, so those titles are now with TRC, and we're just seeking support to proceed now to actually dispose of those blocks.
Thank you. Councillors, any more questions on this report? Would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Wills moving, Councillor Clifton seconding. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 12.2, organisation review, structure adoption. Could we have a mover to open the report, please? Councillor Hodge, seconder, Councillor Cardew. Those in favour? Thank you. Could I ask the CEO to perhaps talk to the CEO or the General Manager, whoever's appropriate?
Certainly happy to. Thank you, Mayor. So this report is the presentation of the revised organisational structure following the direction from Council to move from a 3-department model to a 2-department model. We've undertaken a review of the organisation and realigned functions to deliver that outcome, and that's what this report represents.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Hodge?
I assume what we're doing today is we're endorsing the structure in blue. Of course, the organisational review won't be completed for some time. Things may change, you know, in 6 months, 12 months, or whatever. So, what I'm asking really is, if we think the structure should be changed a bit because of circumstances that may come out of it, that's quite easy enough to do. Like, this is not set in stone, it can be adjusted.
My understanding, Councillor Hodge, and I'll defer to one of the officers, is that for this structure to be changed, it needs to come back to Council for a resolution. So that would be the process if at some point down the track, this particular level of structure was wanting to be changed, the people around the table would vote on that. That's my understanding. Is that right through the CEO?
That's correct. Councils can't bind themselves and they can't bind future councils, so it's always open, Councillor Hodge, for a council to amend previous decisions or change them significantly. That's all.
Any more questions, councillors? Councillor Clifton?
I have a question about stage 2, which is included in here. I wonder if it's possible, Mr. Mayor, to get some guidance from the General Manager as to the completion of stage 2.
To the General Manager, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I perhaps ask you to read, I'm not quite sure what specifically
I'm sorry.
your question is.
Stage 2 will consider the operations of council, the workflows, the processes, staffing as provided for in the structure and the budget, and structure of the work teams to improve efficiency and sustainability of service delivery within a reduced cost environment, and identifying opportunities for redeployment and multi-skilling where possible. There are several issues that are raised in there. So we're, hopefully today, we approve stage 1. Now, there's a lot of work done in relation. The real work now starts. And the really sensitive work that deals with people and their place in the organisation. It's taken us, I think, about 3 or 4 months to get to this stage. And I don't have the date when we first decided collectively that we would go to a new organisation structure, but let's say it's 4 months, I think. Let's say it's 3. So that's undoubtedly created some confusion, if you like, or not, some consternation, some concern in staff. I'm wondering, now that we get to, once the council resolve to, if they do, resolve to approve the structure today, where are we after that? Where are we in terms of stage 2? Recognising that that is not the council's role. The council role is to monitor and to ask what the process, how long the process is going to take.
Thank you. So through the Mayor, I think, so just a couple of things I'll just note. Firstly, that it's important, I think, to focus on the fact that this is about opportunities, not issues. So this is not suggesting that these things are issues, it's suggesting that there are opportunities for us to investigate and improve, and that's just an important distinction in terms of words. The other thing, just to speak to how people are feeling and the consternation comment. I think the statements and the councillors have provided assurance to staff that the focus of this operational review is not about cutting numbers, and I think that's been very helpful in giving them that level of comfort that it is actually about looking at the operations and how we can do things better and improve efficiency. So that's been a very important part of the process. In terms of where we're at, we have a methodology for a formal review, which will we're actually working tomorrow mapping out timelines on by team, how we actually go into each team and sit down with each team and understand the service, the customers, the inputs, the outputs, the processes, all of those things which go into defining how we operate and how we might be able to improve. Separate to that, the areas, the various business areas have already been working on identifying operational efficiencies, because that was actually already part of the organisational culture program that we'd undertaken. So people were in various teams already working on that, and we already have started capturing efficiencies that have been identified and achieve through some of those activities. So 2 parts. One is the formal process of going in by team and really drilling into that and doing that discovery process and collecting that data and really understanding what's going on, which will also achieve those outcomes. But the second part is already underway, which is those teams autonomously looking at those efficiencies and capturing them where they find them.
Yes, I'm sorry. My question really was, what time frame do you see? The time frames usually go in terms of months, or before Christmas or after Christmas, or because we have, as councillors, of course, have, as do you, other considerations in relation to budget reviews and things like that, and forming the new budget. We need some level of indication as to whether it's more or whether it's less or whether it's what so I ask you in the context, in that wider context, do you have a time frame that you could relate to us?
So we have a meeting tomorrow to actually go through and specifically map out those discovery workshops with each team, and once we've done that, we'll have the detailed timeline then of when that process will be complete.
If I may,
So that's where we're at in the process.
Clarify that further. As I indicated to councillors, just an informal workshop the other day, we had a meeting yesterday to finalise the plan for where to from here. So that plan has been finalised at BLT level, executive leadership team level, and Hillary and the manager of people and culture are adding timelines to that tomorrow. So we're well on the path. We all acknowledge and recognise that we don't want this hanging around forever, because councillors have considerations, but also staff and the community has considerations, because the review is going to focus on what work effort is needed to deliver the services. And as I mentioned the other day, one of the decisions that this council needs to make is what services it's going to deliver to the community and what service levels are going to be provided to the community. And a proper organisational review takes all those matters into account. So it's certainly not a matter, and I've heard some talk out in the community that it's all about cutting staff numbers. It's certainly not that. It's looking for what services we as an organisation are going to deliver and what work effort we need to deliver those services. So it's a fairly comprehensive piece of work, and I commend council for giving us the time to work through it, because a number of us have been here before where there's been restructures and they haven't worked because the focus has been on numbers. This is more comprehensive, and I think will result in a longer term sustainable outcome for council and the community. I hope that clarifies it somewhat, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Clifton.
Well, from my perspective, thanks CEO, and thanks General Manager. I think I have drawn a conclusion which I'll make, and I'm sure other people here will draw conclusions, that we can't expect a result before Christmas, and I think we should expect the result given Christmas is usually includes January and a bit of time in February. By the time you get yourself going properly, we should expect a result in time for the adoption of the new budget next year. That's what.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to talk to that, and while obviously I don't want to commit to specific times, we do want to get it done as quickly as possible. December isn't a write-off for council. We don't close down till lunchtime on the 24th, and there'll be plenty of people working on this project during December. Most staff, those with families are a little bit different, but most staff are back at work on the 2nd or 3rd of January. So we aim to get something back to council for final consideration well before the end of this financial year, and I'm happy to go on the record saying that.
Thank you.
Councillors? Could we have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Councillor Hodge moving the officer's recommendation, Councillor Billney seconding. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. .3 Engagement of Technology 1 to deliver System Modernisation Phase 2. Could I have an officer to move that the report be open for discussion? Councillor Hodge moving that it be open for discussion. A seconder? Councillor Wilts seconding. Thank you. Could I ask that we ask the officer in attendance to just give us an overview of this one? Thank you.
So, Table Lands Regional Council utilise Technology One products as the main corporate application for delivery of all our council services. And so back in 2018, we entered into a 3-phase improvement program with our systems, and moving them up to a cloud environment and also doing some system improvements. So at the end of December 2019, we finalised phase 1 of our project, which was to realign our financial ledger to a new services model, and also to do some improvements and put in place efficiencies around processing for accounts payable, and a number of other system improvements. So we're just about to actually kick off with phase 2 of the project, which is to finalise and implement full works and assets management, contract management, grants management, do an improvement on a cemetery management application, and also implement full mobile field management, all from the one application, so removing a number of legacy disparate systems which don't actually integrate with Technology One. So again, putting in place quite a number of efficiencies and removing a lot of manual processing that currently happens in the organisation. So to be able to deliver phase 2 of that project and the implementation of the new modules, I'm seeking Council's support to engage Technology One for the implementation services for that improvement.
Thank you. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Clifton.
Yes, Adrian, may I address to the officer. $271,000 to the Tech Bund model. That to put in phase 2 delivery. The approval of this kicks off phase 2, basically, in a way. What other costs will flow from this decision?
So phase 2 is a broader activity. So system modernisation phase 2 includes a number of system improvements. So like I said, cemeteries application, there's a number of other elements of system improvements that we're doing as well. So the engagement of Technology One is for the implementation of the brand new modules. So in addition to that, we've got an overall approved project on the capital program this year for phase 2 to the value of $640,000, and that is also to implement a number of other smaller system improvements, but also to deliver a new set of modules and to move away from other legacy systems. We've also got other costs of data migration activities. We've got costs of internal staff time, and that all gets captured to realise the entire cost of the improvement.
Thanks. Just one more.
Councillor Clifton.
Yeah. I don't have any sort of problem with this at all, but and I know all of this information is available somewhere throughout the network, and some of us joined the council at the last election well after this had all started. What I would ask you to consider in the future presentation is to include, but I think it would be relatively easy to say this is what we've done in phase 1, this is what we're doing in phase 2, and this is the bit, so that I can get a full picture of where it fits. It's really an updating from my point of view, I wonder if that would be difficult to put into the background of future submissions. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Does that sound reasonable?
That does sound reasonable. Just also just refer. Can I just clarify? Are you talking about financials and all elements of that information? Because just in the background section of this report, I've actually detailed the elements of each phase of the project.
Yes, yeah, no, I realise that, but I'm just talking about the financial.
Sure.
Just sort of, because in the end, the hit list, sorry Mr Mayor, I didn't seek your permission to speak, but what we're all driven by is of course a dollar figure and where it fits, so that would be a great benefit to me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Hodge?
Yes, thanks very much. I'd just like to know, going through our capital budgets from last year, plus this year, I think we've had something like last capital budget, we had an allocation of 968,000. And then there was, plus there was 405,000 for cloud migration. Is that part being not quite done yet, I don't think, is that correct? Cloud migration for everyone?
Yeah, are you happy to answer these, or are these more Hillary's? No. Yeah.
Mr Mayor, I'd just caution again that we're getting into the level of detail that officers have got no notice about for this meeting. If the question wants to be asked, I would be suggesting that officers take them as questions without notice and revert to the next meeting with that information, because it creates the opportunity for errors in answering things off the top of your head.
So are you happy with that, Councillor Hodge, if you prepare a written...
Yeah, a report on, see, I don't, of course we're all new councillors, in the report, it's under the label by BUS 274, that's the contract. I don't really know what the total cost of the contract is, or was it done, you know, was it $3 million, $2 million, doesn't matter, but I'd like to know what the total contract price is. It seems very substantial and fine. So that's what I'm really after. What is the total budget for it? And it looks like over 3 phases by the look of it, by the sounds of everything. And as I said the other day in an informal meeting, that when this phase 2 is done, which is next October, I think it is, I'd like officers to show us, you know, how it's performing. So we know for a substantial amount of money, but that's money, that we're getting value for money. That's the point of my questioning. Okay, so, yeah, in a report for next meeting, if we could get a total of what the total budget is, what the contract is, and how it's been, you know, over what period it's been.
Well, perhaps can I suggest if you draft that up and perhaps send it to myself and the CEO first, and then we'll forward that to the relevant officer. Yeah. Is that all right? Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, look, I have to agree with what Councillor Hodge says. I won't be supporting this recommendation. I just don't know enough about it. I think for me, I want to know how much it is and what we're going to get out of it at the end of the day. I just don't know that information at this point in time. So I won't be supporting this recommendation.
Just a question for the relevant officer. If the recommendation is not supported, what are the impacts or ramifications?
So through the Mayor, if this report or this recommendation is not supported, we will not be able to engage Technology One, and therefore we will not be able to deliver the element of the project.
And so that would mean this phase and the following phase would not be able to be delivered.
Correct.
Through the Mayor, if I could also just add that the officers have negotiated a 30% discount on the rate for elements of this, which would also obviously be lost.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge?
See my thoughts. Now, if we didn't, that means we reached a contract, is that correct? Because I don't know how this tender's been awarded, you see. That's what I'm saying. I haven't got the information. You know, was the tender BUS 274 Technology 1? It wasn't a one lump tender.
So through the mayor, that's a local buy contract.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, so
it's not us, it's local buy.
Yeah.
So we're accessing those services through a broader agreement that local buy has with Technology 1.
Okay. So basically, it's not a contract. It's just an agreement that we have through that local buy.
It's an arrangement that local buy have that we are able to access services through. So the risk, again, sorry, through the mayor, is the risk is around business operations. So I think the immediate consequence, obviously, is as stated, that we can't then proceed with the delivery of this phase. But the flow-on consequences from that then on the business operations will be significant. We wouldn't be able to identify all of them right now, but certainly they would be significant in terms of just how we deliver business, other decisions that have already been made around not proceeding with certain applications and products and so forth. So it would be a significant impact.
Mr Mayor, if I may, I think the information that councillors are seeking, or some of it at least, is at the bottom of my page 119. At the end of the report it says project objective and scope, and there's a number of points there that set out what this work will contribute towards. I think there's some pretty important issues there for council, is, you know, including the improved contract and contractor management capabilities. One of the big issues that we've always had in our WHS audits here, conducted by the state and independent auditors, is the lack of contractor management on our work sites. That's presented as a high risk for us. So the project is aimed at improving this. My concern, and I'll put it very bluntly, is that we've gone down this path a long way in improving our systems. Technology 1 is basically a sole supplier. To turn the ship around at this stage and go in another direction will cost millions of dollars. And my other point, David Clifton, Councillor Clifton, sorry, is that we're really at the stage that we've taken our car to the mechanic, it's half fixed, and we've said stop work on it. That's my comment, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Clifton?
I accept all of the comments made by the officers around the table. But it ought to be clear, this is a statement, not about, it ought to be clear that the information that we're receiving is incomplete from our point of view. And that it's difficult to justify a decision when you have what you consider to be incomplete information. I have given you an indication of what would be, it could be included to make the information complete from my point of view. I don't know how that would satisfy other councillors' needs, but there is no inference whatsoever from anything that I've said that we want to throw this out the door. And I think it's a long bow for the CEO to draw to bring that level of argument into it. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Well, if I can comment on that one, Mr Mayor.
I'll just go to Councillor Hodge and then...
Thank you.
I understand, you know, we have approved the capital budget. We've actually approved this amount, it's 217 because we've got, in phase 2, we've got 562,800 this year and another 375,200, that's what we this year we haven't put next year, of course. I understand we just can't stop it. You know, I've been through, pardon me, computerisation stuff before, and I know we just can't stop it like that. So, and I understand where everyone's coming from, but pardon me, I think we do have to pass this, and then when the reports come back in the next meeting, where we're going, how much it's costing us, so we know everything and we're fully informed of what we're doing, instead of doing it like piecemeal. So I think we do have to pass the office recommendation.
To the CEO. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to make a couple of points. The first one is, this isn't the first time the Council discussed Technology One and the projects. We had a significant number of workshops and information was provided to Council as part of the budget process, in which Council adopted a budget to deal with Technology One. That's one point. Councillor Clifton, if you take my analogy as drawing a long bow, I apologise for that. My analogies aren't always the best, but the analogy was relating to the fact that we've got our car in the mechanics workshop, we're halfway through fixing it, we've stopped work on it. I gave no indication that we weren't going to restart work on it. That's my comment, Mr Mayor.
Councillors? Any more discussion on this one? Do we have a councillor who'd like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Clifton, and seconded Councillor Wills. Those in favour? Carried with the exception of the Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Would you like that recorded?
Yes, please.
Yeah, that can be recorded, please, Amanda. Item 12.4, Ravenshoe Kindergarten and Playgroup Inc. Renewal of lease over property situated at 29 Asham Street, Ravenshoe. Could I have an officer to open the report, please? Councillor Cardew and Councillor Hodge seconding. Those in favour? Thank you. Could I ask the relevant officer just to give a summary? Is that yours, Hilary? Thank you.
Certainly, thank you, Mr Mayor. So this is a recommendation to enter into a trustee lease with the Ravenshoe Kindergarten and Playgroup Incorporated. They have occupied the premises for some time. They had a lease agreement that they entered into back in 1987, which expired in 2017. They've been operating there under a periodic tenancy since that time. Council has previously adopted a new land use and tenure policy, and council officers have now worked with the group to consider their requirements and also council's obligations around the premises, and have now brought forward this recommendation to enter into the registered trustee lease, which is a better way of their continuing tenancy.
Very good, thank you. Councillors, any questions on this one? Councillor Clifton?
I have completed some calculations on the basis of $6,000 worth of rent and other bits and pieces for the year, and the outgoings that we normally pay, that we have to pay for the next 5 years if we sign this lease. We're subsidising each child, if I could say the word place, of those 22 places at the rate of $670 per child per year, by virtue of the fact that we've got very low level of rent and a relatively high level of costs. This is, if you like, typical of, this is the first time this has been presented to the council whilst I'm here, but it's typical of the bind that we find ourselves in. There are many, many of these sorts of arrangements which are costing the taxpayer, which are absolutely legitimate, I don't wish to question that at all, but are costing the taxpayer an enormous amounts of money. I'm sorry, the ratepayer, same, rates are taxes. And we have other large and obvious ones, like the Atherton and Turf Club. We have the Milla Golf Club. We have the caravan parks. We have a thing called the Council's Land Use and Tenure Policy, which hasn't been assessed, as I understand it, since reassessed in 2018. My commentary is I don't want this to be in any way stopped, but if we continue with these kind of arrangements, we are locking ourselves into, in this one, $670 a kid by 22, by 5. There's something like about $70,000 worth of subsidy in this arrangement for the next 5 years without even a blink or a spit. For the long-term future of this region, we can't afford to do these sorts of things without a really significant reassessment of them. I don't know who did the valuation that arrived at $870 a year. May I ask how that valuation was arrived at?
Through the Mayor, I'd have to take that question on notice and get back to you with that information.
Councillor Clifton, is there any more that you'd like to say or ask?
Well, I would like to say that I'm torn between the deep blue sea and the reality of what we're faced with. I'm aware, for example, that our other little ventures, such as the caravan parks, on the face of it, cost us run at a loss of about $1.3 million for the last 4 years. These are all ratepayers' funds, and they're bleeding wherever we look. This is another example of bleeding. So I don't know where I will vote, Mr. Mayor, and whether my vote will make a difference in this particular case. I've had my say, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayden?
So, Ramsay Kindergarten Playgroup Service has run for over 30 years, and there is a need for this service. Council manage service provisions and improve quality of life, exploring well-being for community members. Council is not in the business of making a profit, and I support the recommendation because following on, we still support Younger, Burrumalander and Herberton. So, to me, I think it's a service that we give to the community.
Thanks, Councillor Hayden. Councillors, anyone else like to comment on this? Councillor Hodge?
Yes, look, I understand where the council is coming from, both sides of it. And it's one of those things that we have to weigh up going forward, because we really haven't sat down collectively with our staff and find out where we want to be financially going forward. And we've got a lot of work to do, especially with our next budget. And I understand, and of course a lot of the cost here is depreciation. That's where a lot of the costs are coming from the building. Maybe one of these things that going forward that we have to decide what we do with that building. And whether we, lease it out, whatever, to something else. There'll be another part of this tenure policy where we go. So I understand we got to, we just can't stop the service, but we just need to understand that we can't keep going the way we're going. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's a good point that was raised by all councillors is that if we just look at the finances of the ratepayers, their public funds, and we just looked at finances, ran it like a private business, life would be very easy. However, all local governments, probably since time immemorial, have had an obligation that we refer to as the community service obligation. It's the most difficult thing for any council to decide what that service obligation is. The only group who can decide what that obligation is are the elected members sitting around this table. So that's something that will come up, that will be part of our service review, that will be part of future budget discussions, but you collectively need to decide what is your obligation to the community and all these little groups that we deal with on a regular basis. That's just a point for future consideration, Mr. Mayor. It's not an easy one.
Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, look, is there any opportunity to just provide a one-year lease until we can look at all our service arrangements that we are going to be doing in the very near future?
Through the mayor, so
Yeah, thank you.
if council has the appetite for a reduced lease term, that will certainly be possible.
Councillor Hodge.
Just through the officer again, is it because they've got a month-to-month at the moment, tenancy, to do a lease up, of course, is quite costly. So would it be better to continue for the next 12 months, the way they're going, and bring it back to us when we've made some decisions on where we're going to be? That's what I think would be better.
Councillor Hayden.
So if we're going to do it year by year, how much does it cost in council wages? You're so hell-bent on every dime you spend, so what is the difference? And to me, there's 70 groups that you're going to have to start looking at, and you're worried about 20 children in a place where there's no other services. I can't understand it.
Councillor Wilson.
If I can, we've got two distinct streams here, but they're so intertwined. Like one huge bit is financial, and the other bit is what we are expected, as the CEO alluded to, what we're expected to provide as far as communities go. And they're both extremely relevant to what we want to do. Like what the expectation is from the general public, well, we can only anticipate what their outcome would be if we had a survey. But we know the results of the surveys are minuscule when they come in. I totally appreciate the side of the financials, because at some point in time we've got to start reeling things in. The other issue is Ravensay's a long way away. We have a community expectation that we are to enhance community well-being. We've got to endorse that we are doing whatever we can to sustain a healthy community and to help move that forward. But the argument is, why should people in Walkerman be subsidising what's happening in Ravensay? Why should people in Mount Garnet be subsidising the Miller Golf Course? So we've got a lot of asset management issues to look at, how it relates to our community well-being, to our financials, and we have a lot of work to do. I really think that if as Councillor Hodge suggested before, that if we looked at continuing it on from a month-to-month basis until we can get our heads around those two issues and come to a collective compromise as to where we're going financially and with community well-being.
Councillor Hayden.
I don't find that any town subsidising any other town. The TRC is actually a whole community of 25,000 people. I don't think that I'm subsidising any other town. To me, my rates will go into one bucket, and my little bit of profit that may be at Mount Garnet goes to Youngborough is just total rot. So to me, it's a whole big bucket of money for the whole entire Tabans Regional Council area.
Councillor Bill.
Yeah, through the mayor. Look, I just want to reinforce, council's obligation to the community, as the CEO suggested, the community service and social obligations, but it's also the increasing the livability of the Shire. So, yeah, it's not just only financial considerations that we need to look at.
Councillor Clifton.
My final word, Mr. Mayor. Nothing that I've said infers that we wouldn't continue to provide these services at Ravenshoe or any other community. That it costs us a lot of money is well known. That we could develop better solutions is yet to be discussed. If in fact we didn't enact this thing, this lease, we would be in fact saving them money because they only pay $55 a year now. So they would be in a better financial situation if we didn't do it. We're doing it not necessarily we're doing it for a whole variety of reasons. But I do want to record it made clearly on record, I am not opposed and never have said anything about removing these kinds of important and essential services to the community. But if we engage in agreements like this 5 years ahead, we've locked ourselves in without the ability to review where we stand with the assets and the costs that go with it. We've locked, and I don't think that's a good idea.
Thanks, Councillors? Would someone like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Hayden is moving the officer's recommendation. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bilding, seconding. Those in favour? So that's carried. We've got Councillor Cardew and Councillor Hodge voting against. Would you like your names recorded? Yep. Yep, you can record those, please, Amanda. Thank you. Okay. 13.1, Land Acquisition Water Treatment Plan. Could a councillor move that we open this report for discussion? Actually, can I just suggest we have an adjournment just for 5 minutes? Is that okay? We do that?
Mr. Mayor,
yeah.
Got all the power in your hands.
Yeah. So it's just really a bathroom break. So about 5 minutes. Is that okay?
You need to move the motion.
I do, don't I?
I didn't hear that.
I do. Sorry. So could I move a motion that we have a small adjournment, 5 minutes? I'll move it. Second, Councillor Clifton. Those in favour? Those in favour? Thank you. Thanks very much. Carry.
And councillors, I'll just remind you that we're not turning the live stream off.
Thank you.
For the short break.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, we'll be clear.
Hey, Mark. Yes.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Right.
This cake takes next.
You don't ever repeat.
See you again.
I was leading up to saying I have to take it now.
That's good. That's good outcome.
Is that the polite thing to say, or just be genuine? Good. So,
Hey Jason. Hey Rod, how are you? Do we have
any official public documentation in relation to item 12.3.
Do we have any additional documentation?
Publicly available documentation.
In addition to what's in the report?
Going back historically as to phase 1, N2, N3 and what other contracts may have been proposed.
Yeah, I can't answer that, that'd be a question.
Might be able to help if it's public, it'll be on the website.
Yeah, okay, well tomorrow I might know, yeah.
All official documentation publicly available in relation to
Technology.
12.3 technology and the delivery of the systems phase 1, 2 and what the future elections and how many phases are there?
Yeah, there's nothing on the website that I know of except
And total cost.
possibly back to the first phase was done. I probably didn't come to the council meeting. It was 500,000. Far from that. We've just had two things in the past 2 weeks to get that channel through. So there's nothing on the website that I know of, but yeah.
Just rounding up.
Where's it's 14 in there.
Far cheaper and far more reliable. But anyway.
Okay, everyone, we can be seated. Yeah.
I was wondering what tires that letter. And that one that Hodges or someone from the mayor or somebody sent through. Copy.
Just waiting on Councillor Wills.
And it's in the junk mail section.
John, just if I informally, you know where the red triangle is there on the map? What's that? That looks like a sort of almost a railway line beside it. That big shed. Can't be that.
Which map are you looking at?
The map of the site we're going to borrow. The photo map.
You're talking about page 100?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move to recommence the meeting. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hodge seconding. Those in favour? Thank you. Okay. Meeting recommenced. 47. All right. Item 13.1, land acquisition water treatment plant. Could I have an officer move the report that we open this for discussion? Thanks, Councillor Cardew and Councillor Hayden. Thank you. Those in favour? Thank you. Could we ask John, the relevant officer, to just give us an overview on this one to get things going?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, the report before you today is seeking approval for a recommendation to purchase a piece of land on the lot described in the report. The purpose of the land is to locate a major reservoir facility and a future water treatment plant. Those pieces of infrastructure are key elements of the Ravenshoe Region Water Supply Scheme upgrade we're pursuing in the next couple of years. The actual site selection went through a process. We had a number of, I guess, a long list of sites. We narrowed that down to a short list of 2. We went through a whole life cost exercise, because depending on the actual site you choose, does have a bearing on the infrastructure. So we needed to make sure we took into account, I guess, the big picture, how the actual site affects the infrastructure layout, and identified that being the lower whole life costs, as well as taking into account some other non-price criteria in terms of the land being somewhat remote from the Ravensden Township. Whereas the alternate site was pretty much in the residential area, and putting industrial facilities like brick plants and reservoirs, and not necessarily consistent with residential areas, as well as the matter of the site, this site that we put before you today, as being a very elevated site. So it has distinct advantages in terms of pressures in supplying water to remote areas like Middle Street, Catherineburg.
Thank you. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Hodge.
Just one, I think the cost is $22,000, and I think it's in your report that it wasn't originally in the capital budget, but it's been reallocated from the, I'll get it here for you, somewhere. Mill Stream North Rising, mate. So it's been reallocated from there.
Councillors, any questions or further discussion on this one? Would someone like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Hayden, seconder. Councillor Bilney. Those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Okay, we go to item 13.2, 2020-2025 water and wastewater customer service standards. Would a councillor like to move that we open this report? Councillor Cardew, seconded Councillor Bilney. Those in favour? Thank you. Could we go over to you again? Thank you, John, to get us started on this one.
Okay, customer service standard report seeking the council's approval of what is basically a major review of the what is currently the existing customer service standard for the wood and waste area of council. Customer service standards are a regulatory requirement of all water service providers in Queensland. It does mandate that there's certain KPIs, key performance indicators, must be defined and targets set for those. There is regular reporting and to monitor how we're performing on those KPIs that we have to send through to the regulators on an annual basis through the annual report. One of the purposes of setting the KPIs, and for that matter, the matter of having a customer service standard, is the ability for the state to benchmark and monitor performance of the service providers throughout Queensland. And there are annual reports that are produced and made publicly available that actually compare all water service providers across Queensland. And further to that, there's also a national performance report which takes further KPIs up into the national level right across Australia.
Thanks, John. Councillors? Questions? Would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Cardew, seconded Councillor Clifton. Those in favour? Thank you. Carried. (13.3) Design and construction of reservoir roof Tinaroo lookout. Could we have an officer to move the report be opened? Sorry, a councillor. Councillor Cardew, and seconded Councillor Clifton. That the report. Those in favour? Thank you. And it's over to you again, John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start by talking about apologies. This report's seeking recommendation to approve a contract for the design and construction of the interior lookout reservoir. This particular project is one of many relating to reservoirs that arose from condition assessments that were undertaken around about 2018-19 on all our reservoirs, 24 reservoirs thereabouts. Condition assessment was undertaken internally as well as externally to identify a program of improvements to our reservoirs, one on the basis of age and two on the basis of ensuring we had secure reservoirs that protected our potable water supplies, because reservoirs are a prime point of contamination into the system, so we need to make sure those structures are actually intact and protect our potable water supplies for our customers. There is a rolling program, it's been included in our 10-year capital works program, to work through each of the reservoirs over this one. So the more immediate issues were identified as high priority, particularly those that presented a security risk to our potable water supplies. We conducted about, I think it was 4 or 5 reservoir replacements last year. This was a further reservoir that required roof replacement, and there's one further reservoir that will be replaced next financial year. But apart from that, rather than just actual roof construction, there's matters in regards to pest and vermin protection, which relates to more miscellaneous type activities to protect the reservoirs. So the re-roofing of reservoirs are a major undertaking, but we did identify this as being high risk. We went to public tender on this particular project. We put it to the market in terms of offering the ability to provide innovation in regards to the roofing, and the innovation applied to the durability of material selection, so we have the ability to actually identify what return on investment there would be into providing structural steel versus higher grade steel components in the roofing. This is a reservoir that's got a considerable amount of life left in it, so we did go through a whole life cost exercise to identify selecting a higher grade of steelwork in the roofing. Had certainly a whole lot of cost benefits to the standard steel grade products.
Very good. Councillors? Councillor Cardew, then Councillor Clifton.
I've got 2 points to raise. One, and this is just this is an admin thing, John, was that in the recommendation you got the quoted price as 411. In the recommendation you've got the quoted price of 411,400, but in your table table one, it doesn't correlate, because you've got one with GST and one without. Now, without knowing tenderers who they are because of the system that we've developed, it took me some time to work out who was who in the zoo, so to speak.
Okay.
1 point. Second point, in table 3, tenderer number 2, option 1, I believe, is the one that you've got recommended. Is that right?
Tenderer number 2, option 1.
That's the one you've recommended. I just know that tender number 4, option 2, has the same construction materials as number 2, but for $64,000 cheaper.
Yep.
Can you explain?
Yep, shall do. So in terms of the evaluation criteria, that's in table 4, and the scores that applied. We do rely on the information that's provided in the tender documentation, of course. Relevant experience, the tenderer number 4 had no prior experience in constructing reservoir roofs, whilst they did demonstrate their ability to fabricate stickables. There is a couple of elements to reservoirs that make it interesting. One being working at height, and the second, which is very relevant to reservoirs, is working over water. Tender number 2 had quite a well-detailed methodology and statement of works of how they were going to actually manage those risks, because they are certainly safety risks. So in terms of the rating applied to relevant experience, we did actually score tender number 2 higher than tender number 4.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Cardew?
So if I may, through the chair, in relation to your first comment, just as a matter of explanation, the reason why we including GST dollar value in the recommendation is that under the Local Government Act we actually have to publish that figure on our website once it's awarded, and that has to be including a GST number. The reason why we discuss the numbers in the report excluding GST is because our budgets are excluding GST, so that's to be able to compare it, including excluding GST with our budget numbers. So what I recommend in future is that we, in the table where we say these are the offers that we have received, that we include both dollar values for clarity. But I was just trying to explain why we have that discrepancy there.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Mike.
No worries.
Thank you. Councillors then? Councillor Clifton.
I'm just interested in the question of budget and surpluses. I know in our approved capital budget, we approved $150,000 for Millstream North Rising Main, maybe it's not right. And yet we're saying here, if that's the same project, we have $115,000, either we're not going ahead with it, or that $150,000 project we approved actually only cost therefore $35,000 and with $115,000 savings.
So under the section finance and resource implications, under operating, it's stated that the project budget has been deferred for the Millstream Rising Main relocation to the amount of $115,000.
Okay, well then the physiometers, are they still being installed at Wild River Dam?
Yeah, they're completed, so there was a surplus of that installation that's available in the budget.
So then, if I may, Mr. Mayor, a question to, I think, General Manager Hilary. Do we go through a reallocation process of these things? A formal reallocation process? We decided what happened with the budget. We set the budget. Now, I'm trying to understand the process. If we approve this, do we approve the reallocation as well?
So, through the Mayor, I think General Manager Infrastructure would like to comment, but certainly we will be doing budget reviews through the year, and the purpose of the budget reviews is to consider those things, and any changes to budgets are brought to council.
Yeah, so in addition to that, on my page 179 under the financial section, it does state that the reallocation will be formalised in the next quarterly budget review process. So we acknowledge that we can't actually adopt a different budget through the means of this report, but to give you sufficient information, it's the intention to make these changes as included in this report in the next quarterly budget review process, where the budget will then be revised to reflect these.
Thank you, sir. Mark, but from my point of view, this is a situation where there's a secondary effect. The question is, why have we deferred the Millstream price? And I'm not saying it's not legitimate, but I'm saying that there should be an explanation so we understand what's happening. We don't understand, so the installation of physiometers at Wild River Dam, it has been completed and it's over budget because we only had to put 4 in instead of 5 or something like that. Would be useful to know, because we have approved the capital budget And we don't know whether, it doesn't indicate here that it's complete. It wouldn't take much to fill that out a little bit, would be my request.
Valid comment, yeah.
Councillors, any more questions on this one or discussion?
Yes, well,
Councillor.
just to verify what Councillor Clifton done, would it be pertinent to say, when you put those exclamation in, that we agree to that reallocation and we'll approve it at the next budget review, so everyone knows?
Yeah, so who, you asking that question to?
Through you,
So, through you, Mark.
So through the chair, so if I understand correctly, are you requesting if we should add an additional recommendation that basically deals with the reallocation of the funding?
Yes.
I'm not sure if we can amend the budget as part of this report process, so I'll have to look at the CEO for that. But I think that would be a budget resolution rather than an award of contract resolution, which I'm not sure you can actually do.
I'm not asking, I know you can't amend the budget until it's, when we do the review, but we sort of formalise it to say, yes, we understand that there is going to be reallocations, and we acknowledge it will be determined at the next budget review.
So the way I see
I guess it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But that's going to happen anyway, isn't it? I mean, that's how it happens. I mean, we don't want to be, my view is we don't want to be too prescriptive with this. If there's savings, that's good. So it comes back to the budget review as part of the due process.
So if I may, so by endorsing the recommendation in the report, you're basically doing what you're suggesting. You're basically accepting that there will be a change in the coming budget review, that you're already sort of taking a step. You're already utilising that change at the moment, before it's actually been adopted. The other alternative would be to not award this contract, because obviously the currently adopted budget specifically for this item doesn't have enough funding.
Just leave it.
Councillors, any more on this one? Would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Wilkes, seconder. Councillor Clifton, those in favour? Thank you, carried. .4 Supply and delivery of road widening and bitumen seal, Curtin Fig Tree Road, Youngborough. Could an officer move the school to be open for discussion? Sorry, could a councillor, sorry. Councillor Hodge, moving. Councillor Cardew, those in favour? Carried. Can I ask you to talk to this one?
Through the chair, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Curtin Fig Tree Road is what we call a local road of regional significance. We have a statement of intent for that road as to what that road should look like. So you could suggest that that's a desired service level, and as a result of that, comparing the current geometry and design of the road with that desired service level, provides for upgrades of this road. In the current year budget, we've got allocation for 3 sections of Curtin Fig Tree Road, which are basically all the sections that are not part of the rainforest area. The purpose of this project is to basically widen those sections of road from 6.5 on average to 8 metres, to improve the safety of obviously tourists going to the Curtin Fig Tree area, but also in consideration of large truck movements, specifically during cane harvesting, and also trucks that service the quarry on Ball Road. So this project is 50% funded through the state government, through the Transport Infrastructure Development Scheme, and we did a design, and we called for open tenders for 4 submissions, including 1 local submission. and we conducted an assessment across the price and non-price criteria, and as a result of that assessment, we are recommending to award this contract to the Bonadilla Family Trust for a tender amount of 1.1 million and a little bit, including GST. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillors?
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Hodge, then Councillor Clifton.
Just a quick one is in the waiting table there, you just need to table there where the tender sums and adjusted things, there just a little needs to be adjustment there. With number 10 or 1, I think.
Sorry, which table?
The N one, where it's got the assessment criteria. It's just a little bit error there in the figures, that's all.
Oh, understand. Thanks for that, I'll have a look at that.
So whereabouts are you talking about?
Down the bottom of the report.
Assessment criteria.
Yeah, you just have to open it up a bit. Notice 10 to 1 and 10 to 4 in the GST are exactly the same.
Yes, so exactly. Good point. Thank you for that, Councillor Hodge. So, in accordance with our procurement policy, we've now included in the endorsed policy a methodology where we adjust the price of a non-local supplier up or a local supplier down, if they're not the most cost competitive offer, up to 10% if the price is below 50,000, or up to 5% if the price is above $50,000. So in this case, the adjusted tender price is equal to the tender price of the lowest non-local price offering, to basically affect that part of the procurement policy. So that's purely for assessment purposes. That is not the actual price that they offer. Good pick up.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Clifton, you?
Yeah, I just said, again, back to the reallocation of funds issue. You've got it all detailed here, but I've lost it. Nadia Close Drainage Project, we put aside $200,000. You're saying that there's $154,500. Has the project been complete, or what's?
Nadia Close drainage works have been completed in accordance with the intended scope. When we called for quotations for that work, we got I think from memory 2 offers. We asked 3, we got 2, and the most competitive price offering was very competitive, beyond our expectations, and far removed from the other offer, which was closer to what we initially envisaged for the budget. So basically, we had a very good outcome there. We've got a very good result in the field, and we paid a very low price for it, and that gives us the ability to reallocate some funds to.
Well, we've achieved Nadia Close.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Councillors, any more on this one? Would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Cardew, moving. Councillor Wilt, seconding. Those in favour? Thank you.
Carry.
13.5, sale of freehold land. Would a councillor like to move that this be open for discussion? Councillor Clifton, seconded Councillor Hodge. Those in favour? Thank you. Is this yours, Mark?
I'm happy to talk to it.
Yeah. So I'll just pass over to our General Manager. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, so I'll be quite brief. Council owns various pieces of freehold land that could be considered surplus to Council's needs. We're currently maintaining some or all of these parcels of land, and basically they're not necessarily utilised for any specific purpose. So as requested, Council officers have prepared a report initially for four parcels of land that we believe are surplus to council's needs and could be tendered initially to the public. And this report basically describes those parcels and recommends to initially tender them, and should there be no acceptable tender received, to then sell them through real estate or auction.
Thank you, Mark. Councillors, any questions or discussion on this one?
I just wonder,
and then Councillor Hodge.
At the end of the day, if we've been successful in disposing of them, I asked the question, I think, General Manager Hillary, what happens to the proceeds? How are they dealt with?
So generally the proceeds, the net proceeds of after the actual costs of conducting the sale, essentially are offset against the write-off cost of the asset that sits on the books. So it may be, so they're operating revenue, and there's an operating expense associated with the write-off of the asset, which may end up net with an expense to council, because the sale may not recover the full book value of that asset, and that's always, I guess, a risk or a possibility in any situation. So operating revenue offset by operating expense associated with that.
But then, so we're selling an asset, we're then offsetting that against previously and current, previously incurred operating costs. If these are the parcels of land, so let's imagine that we actually had, at the end of the day, we offset our mowing costs and things of that nature, and we had collectively $100,000 left. On the positive side, I can understand that we certainly won't on the side of, if we're disposing of land and buildings as well as land. What happens to that? I'm just theorising, that $100,000 surplus after all those operating costs have been met.
So, assuming we sell it for more than it owes us.
Yes.
Yeah. That would, so that the within our operating expenditure, the financials that you receive every month, you've got the breakdown of all of those things. That the actual amount in the table will sit under, I think it's capital. It actually shows up as a positive capital expense in those financials, which would contribute to, all else being equal, a surplus in the bottom line.
Okay, so it just goes into the pot.
Yes.
Effectively, that's what I'm trying to get
to. It has to be accounted for within our.
Yeah, so it goes into our operating pot. It's not correct. For example, a community may say, well, you're selling off the land here. After all is done and dusted, there's $50,000 left over. We want to use that in our community. Put it aside for us. No, we don't do that. We put it into a pot. It doesn't stop the community for seeking a project for that amount or whatever it may do, but it goes into a common pot.
Yeah, so
general fund pot.
So we have to account for it within our normal accounts, and it's always it always sits with council to make determinations about how we spend money. So we don't, the officers don't get to go, oh, here's a bit of extra money, let's go have a party, or we can't do anything else. We can't spend anything other than what you have given us approval to spend based on the budget. So yes, but it has to be accounted for within our normal accounts. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So effectively, we convert a capital item, an asset, less its expenses, into the operating pot. It's not corralled anywhere else. It just goes into the operating pot.
Yeah, because it occurred this year, so it'll sit, and I'm not an accountant, but I'm pretty sure it sits in the capital expenses line as a positive, you know, in the way that it's actually reflected. And yes, it's because it is revenue in this current year. Yeah.
Councillor Hodge was next.
Yeah, similar question, of course, we spoke about the other day, is I'd really like to have it recorded somewhere that we know how much cash that we've attributed from the sale of all these lands, because this is only 4 that we're doing. There could be another 100. So I'd really like, could be, all over the place. So, I really want to record how much money. I mean, okay, yes or no, the balance sheet will go down, the asset, right? But the asset will go back into your bank account, the cash, okay? Well, that's how my accounting would be in my books, but local government's a little bit different. So, but anyway, at the end of the day, cash is cash. Doesn't matter how we record it, right? I want to know how much cash we've got from the sale of all these properties. I would like to have it recorded. Yes, we don't have reserves like they used to, where we put that in the reserve. Well, we could, because we may want to say, okay, we're going to sell all these properties off, right? And we may get $1 million in cash, right? Doesn't matter where the effect of the accounting side is, the cash is cash. And we may want to say, righto, council building wants a new building out at Malanda, right? It may cost $5 million, right? Then we might say, well, we've sold those properties for $2 million, we're going to help fund that by that $2 million.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we've got to be careful about making assumptions when we don't have all the information in front of us, because these lots that are on the screen and in the report may actually incur a loss to the council. There's no suggestion here whatsoever at this stage that council is going to have a pot of money at the end of these sales to put towards anything. If, for example, and I think Hillary gave a good example before, let's say Herbert Street, Ravenshoe is valued at, and I'll make up a figure because I don't know what the figure is, but it's got a book value, it's been valued by a registered valuer at $50,000. If we sell that for $30,000, we've actually got to incur that expense in our account, so we've actually made a loss on it.
Technically.
Well, we've made a loss on it.
Yeah,
so
look,
it may not be the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Basically I want to know is, just like to have recorded somewhere that we know how much of the value of all these lots that we pretend to sell over the next.
Well, look, I would think that's going to be easy to capture, isn't it? The sales for the year, easily captured.
So through the Mayor, they must be reported in our financials. Yep. So you will have the outcomes of those things, but they must be reported in our financials. We have no choice other than to do so, so they will be recorded as they occur. That's right.
Very good. Councillors, any more questions on this one? Very good. Here's hoping we sell some land.
Here goes Kelly Street.
Would someone like to move the officer's recommendation? So Councillor Cardew moving, Councillor Clifton seconding. Those in favour? Thank you.
Carried.
Okay. So, moving on there. Item 14, notice of motion. Item 15, business without notice. Sorry. Okay, we've got business without notice up on the board. Yeah, unfortunately I can't read that, but
First one, Mr. Mayor, deals with the concession for the Malanda Lions Club, and I believe Councillor Bilney wishes to speak to that.
okay.
Yeah, through the Mayor. Yes, I'd just like to withdraw the business without notice at this point, as it was dealt with at item 10.1.
Thank you, Councillor Building. And the second one regarding the TRCE. Councillor Clifton, would you like to talk to this one?
Yes, I think the TRCE is, I wonder, Mr Mayor, whether Councillor Hayden remains a board member of the TRCE?
No.
No.
No, Councillor Hayden no longer a director.
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of that. Probably was, but I think it's time to have the TRCE formally put on the table. That's why I put that forward. The thing's not. Oh yes, it is considered to be considered at October's meeting. I don't have any expectation that it really will be finalised because of the legal aspects associated with it. But I do think that from our community point of view, we need to have something formally on the table and adopted, endorsed, so that our community can see it. There are, as all of us know around this table, there are lots of remaining, continuing, damaging rumours about individuals and about how they their role in it. Those things need to be, if you like, discussed. At the same time, there are all sorts of stories about the level of funds that we use on the TRC enterprise. So that could be put on the table as well. I don't expect, on the basis of advice that I've received from the CEO the other day, that the final legal winding up of the company will be complete, but it would be nice to have that detailed so the community could see it and draw their own conclusions and put it in the right place rather than the wrong place that many people have it today. That's why I put this motion forward.
Thanks, Councillor Clifton. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Clifton's motion? Yeah. Councillor Hodge, seconder. Would anyone else like to talk to the motion? Okay. Those in favour? Okay, carried. Thank you. Councillors, that's... sorry, Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, I've got a couple, right?
Sorry?
No one knows anything about at the moment. I'd like to move a motion to have our report back to this council to amend our standing orders. I think our standing orders at the moment are clunky, and I think we need to streamline them.
Okay, we'll just capture that first. Is there particular areas you'd like to elaborate on, Councillor Cardew?
I want to go through. I'd like to see all of our standing orders with regards to running our meeting reviewed and to be more streamlined.
Yeah, my understanding is the standing orders are a work in progress.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I can address that. Personally, I don't believe that we need a motion to have a report to come to council. As I've indicated to council at a number of workshops so far, those standing orders are amended. They are streamlined. What we've been waiting for is the proper opportunity to bring them to council for adoption. A couple of reasons for that is the standing orders that the council has adopted previously include a number of state requirements under legislation, as in councillor conduct, other meeting procedures and so on, how to deal with inappropriate conduct. So we've been streamlining that as much as possible. We also had a policy that was called councillor interaction with the organisation policy, which we've discussed previously, and I've circulated for comment a document called acceptable request guidelines. So they're going to be incorporated as part of our standing orders of meeting procedures. But it is a work in progress because under the changes that take effect on the 12th of October, the state also requires me to adopt guidelines on how councillors receive administration support from staff. So what I'm working on at the moment is rolling all those into a single, very clear, very straightforward, very simple document that will come to council. So that is underway, and we're just waiting for the finalisation of a couple of those, or commencement of some of that legislation.
So, Councillor Cardew, what would you like to do?
When do you think that might come to council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the legislation commences on the 12th of October. As I mentioned, most of the work's done, other than the guidelines for the admin support. I would anticipate October's a real potential, and at the very latest November.
Well, can I amend my motion to have the report brought to the November meeting?
Do we? I'll just see if we've got a seconder for the motion first. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Cardew's motion? We have a seconder, Councillor Hodge. Yeah, and Councillor Hodge, you wanted to talk?
Mr. Mayor, before we go further with that, as I explained, it's more than just standing orders.
Okay.
It's the acceptable request guidelines and the guidelines for administration support for councillors. So all that will be incorporated in
so
that
we should wrap that in the motion, huh?
Should be in the single. It's going to be in the single document.
Okay. So can I ask you, Amanda, to wrap those words in just while we're deliberating? I'll go to Councillor Hodge while that's being drafted.
That's going to be a pretty extensive and complex, maybe. Will we workshop that first? Do we have the ability to workshop that first instead of just to come to the council meeting and try and get through that? I'd like to workshop.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. In these sorts of things, they're largely guided by state legislation. I think workshops are a duplication of time, and the proper role for council is to get the report and consider them at council meetings.
If that's the way you want it, and we will discuss it before, yep, quite happy to do so in open public. That's what we did.
There's nothing, through you, Mr. Mayor, there's nothing controversial in there. The standing orders are what they are. They set out meeting procedures and how we conduct a meeting. Absolutely nothing controversial in that. There's the state requirements for councillor conduct that are included in them. Again, we don't even need to discuss that. That's set by the state. The acceptable request guidelines, you've got a draft of that, and you've had a draft of that for a long time. The responsibility for those guidelines rests with the CEO, not with councillors. And then the administration support for councillors, again, under the information that's provided by the department, that is the responsibility of the CEO and not councillors. So I really don't know the benefit of a workshop is my point, Mr. Mayor.
So have we got that new motion is ready to go, Amanda, is it?
I think that gathers the intent of it, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cardew, are you satisfied with the new motion?
Yep.
And Councillor Hodge, you seconded it. Are you satisfied with that?
I'm happy with the motion there. I'm not quite sure with the CEO saying, well, it's all to do with the CEO, so it just comes to council, that's it. When the report comes to council, we may want to amend it or change it. So what you're saying through you to the CEO, that can't be done.
What I'm saying is it's the proper role of council at a council meeting to have those meetings and discussions in an open, transparent manner in public, so that the full consideration of these policy documents can be seen by members of the public, rather than having a meeting behind closed doors to discuss them. That's what I'm saying, councillor.
I don't know, that seems just a bit strange, because we workshop planning documents, you know. We go like all day going through a document. So anyway, if it can't be amended,
well, council would have the discretion not to adopt it.
Mr Mayor,
Councillor Clifton.
I think we're confusing. We've only got powers to do certain things. We set our own standing orders. So I think that the standing orders should be presented to council. That's something we have control of. I don't agree with the CEO in the sense that acceptable request guidelines and administrative support for councillors are decisions outside the council's power. They could be it should be separated out and submitted to us at the same time, but we have no power to either, we can endorse it if we wanted to. We have no power to reject. We just receive it, if you like. I think they're separate issues, and so I think that they should be presented at the same time as the standing orders, but they don't be included in the resolution because we have no power over them. Perhaps the CEO would like to comment on that.
Yeah, I've got no further comment. I'm happy to accept your guidance, Mr Mayor, when we sit down and look at the reports for the next meeting. There's nothing I can add, really.
Councillors? Okay, well, Councillor Cardew's got a motion up there. We've got a seconder with Councillor Hodge. Those in favour of the motion? So we've got 5 affirmative. Those, would you like your vote against recorded? Councillor Clifton? No, was that no, Councillor? No. So yeah, Councillor Clifton was against and would like it recorded, please. Councillor Cardew.
Okay, my second one is that I'd like to move a motion that before any applications for grant funding are applied for, be brought to council prior to applications being submitted for council approval.
We'll just get this one up.
Can you help us out with the wording again, please? Councillor Cardew, sorry.
Sorry, before any grant applications for grant funding are submitted, they be brought to council prior to the, for approval prior to the applications being submitted.
Is that it, Councillor Cardew? Does that look right? I was going to ask for a seconder, Councillor Billney, because we should have a seconder before we discuss it. So, do we have a seconder for Councillor Cardew's motion? Councillor Hodge is seconding that. So Councillor Billney, did you want to say something?
Yeah, through the Mayor, I'm just a bit confused about the application for grant funding. Who are we talking about? We're talking community grant funding, or is it council applying for grant funding opportunities? That's on.
Yeah, to you,
Sure.
Councillor Cardew.
Okay, I'll clarify that. All applications that council put in for, all grant applications submitted by council.
My concern with that, Councillor Cardew, is council only meets once a month. So I think that's to put it kindly, it's a pretty clunky process if we only get to consider those 12 times a year. I would think there'll be lots of times when funding opportunities are short, and council's not going to have a meeting in time, because the staff, the officers would need time to prepare a submission as well. So that would be my concern. It's putting a burden on both councillors and officers to actually perform in a productive way. I'll go to the General Manager.
So if I may, through the Chair, thanks. I support your concern, specifically around the infrastructure related grant funding applications. There's quite often quite a bit of work that needs to be done to actually put an application together, including getting letters of support from community or groups or businesses. And it's really difficult to do that for multiple options. And often there's, in some cases, we only get 2 weeks notice to put it all together. So in my view, to make this work, we would need to go to council first with our high level options, get support before we do all the groundwork, because there's quite a bit of work in beefing them up before you actually submit them. You don't want to beef up potentially 5 or 6 submissions before you go to council, because we won't just have the capacity or the time to actually do that. So also with a lot of those projects, they're identified, and that's specifically around the infrastructure, they're identified in the 10-year capital plan, and potentially are prioritised through strategies and supported by strategies in corporate and operational plans anyway. So generally staff don't come up just, oh, it's a funding, let's come up with something. It's already something that we think is important. So again, it potentially creates additional churn and probably time away, and potentially risk of not actually being successful in the competitive process, because we just don't have the time to put submissions in time.
Thank you. Just speak briefly on it. I guess my concern about a process like that would be that council's becoming very operational. As we all know, we've all done the training through LGAQ, the department. The Minister addressed us informally the other week, and I don't think there's any doubt that council has a strategic role. If we start looking at individual grants and saying we'll apply for that and we'll tick them off around this table, I think that's a waste of resources and a waste of time, to be honest with you. I think the proper role for council is to set the criteria that officers can look at to then decide whether to put in for that grant. And an example could be if the grant aligns with something in council's corporate plan, then yes, it could be ticked off and applied for. If, and we know the council's views on HR and finance and budgets and the like, so if a grant had the effect of creating a negative impact on staffing or on current operational capacity, then we wouldn't apply for it. So in my view, I think that's the proper role for council, to set those high level criteria. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, but I think it's an appropriate role for council to take that on, because not all grant funding is good funding. plenty out there, but sometimes it's more trouble than it's worth. If we had those criteria, I think it would be very beneficial for the organisation.
Councillors, comments on this one? Councillor Hodge?
Yeah, Kevin, I'm just a little bit worried about, say, I think was it the Work for Queensland grant funding? We only had a week or two to submit that. And that means we wouldn't be able to, have the thing at the pool and that sort of stuff if it had to wait to come to council. You know what I mean? That's what I'm worried about. But yeah.
Councillor Clifton?
If I may address my question to Councillor Cardew. Councillor Cardew, would it be sufficient for your purposes is rather than pass this resolution that we received a weekly report of grants submitted, so that if you wanted then to make, so we don't hold the process up, but if we want to make comment or seek further advice, we can do so.
Thanks.
Suggested to you.
Look, I'm prepared to amend the motion. I think this is an important issue because there's so many grant things that have been funded, so many grants that have been funded now, quit smoking and whatever else. And we know nothing about them. And they're not council's core business. So I'm prepared to amend the motion that in order to expedite the timelines is to have the mayor and a delegate of his choosing from the council to look at these things as they come in and say yes or no. To expedite, but I think we need to be able to identify the ones we don't want and identify the ones we do want before council officers spend time and resources doing reports or funding applications or the like. So I'm prepared to change it so that it can be a decision of the mayor and a delegate of his choosing to address these things as they come in.
Councillor Wilson, Councillor Clifton.
Yeah, just a question. You speak of our core industry, our core function. What is our core function? Have we got a definition of our core function as council? Is there such a thing?
Provide local government services.
Yep.
That's broad.
That's broad. So I don't know. How do we differentiate? How do we say that this grant isn't relevant to our function as a council? If we haven't got a definition, whether it be broad or not, as to whether or not that is determined to be in the best interest of our community. Just putting it out there.
Yeah, Councillor Clifton.
Perhaps I could suggest some words, Mr. Mayor, to add to that.
Are you happy for that, Councillor Cardew?
Yeah.
In the event of an emergent situation, that the mayor and a councillor of his choice be delegated to consider the matter. The matter. And refer it to the next council meeting for ratification.
Look, councillors, I've got a couple of concerns. As the mayor, I'm not keen on being in that position at all. First and foremost. Secondly, I don't think we've thought this. I don't think we've thought this through enough. I mean, I don't think Mark's team should be, infrastructure services. I really don't think they should even come under this umbrella. I mean, infrastructure, you know, if they're talking about water and roads and bridges and, you know, facilities, I don't know, I just think this is, I think this needs, if we're going to do this, I think we need a lot more thought than to try and come up with something today. I know there's programs council can get involved in that is definitely not what most of us would think we should be doing, but I don't think we've done enough thinking on this to, for me, I certainly don't want to be the delegated elected person to be the one making these decisions. Yeah, but look, that's my view. Councillor Hayden?
Just for the record, sometimes we get funding and it actually pays for officers' time in that funding. Just so you know, and councillors cannot delegate any of its powers or functions to an individual council member. I actually don't think that us as councillors, the mayor or any other council can sit there and say, oh, we love that project. Maybe the others don't. I think really we are actually getting into the workings of the council staff, and I actually think we're treading on very thin ice.
Yeah, well, yeah, look, Councillor Hayden, I agree with you. I think it's not one that I'm comfortable with in its current form, that's for sure.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think I just concur with Councillor Hayden's view. I believe that council would be significant risk delegating that power to councillors. We've already seen some instances in the term of this council where matters have been referred for similar sorts of things. So I'd be very wary of dealing with this from the floor without any report or background information for council to properly consider. I'll revert back to my original comments. Council's role is strategic. I see this as being perfect for the amendment of our grants policy so that you as councillors set the criteria for deciding which grants are applied for. That is a perfect strategic role and it's the proper role for council.
Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr Mayor. I think we need to have a little bit more think about this. I understand where Kev's coming from about having grants that are not really what we think is local government and it's costing us money. I understand where he's coming from, but I think we need to, I'd like Kev to just maybe remove it at the moment and we have a good think about it, how we address it.
Councillors? So are you saying you no longer second the motion?
No, I think it should be pulled. I'd like Councillor Kaji to pull it at the moment. I understand where he's coming from, but we need to think about it a bit more.
Mr Mayor, just through our standing orders, I'll be told to raise it once it's been moved and seconded. The matter is now in the control of council and it's not up to individual councillors to withdraw whether they've seconded it or not. It is in the control of council right now.
Councillor Kaji.
Well, can I amend the motion to have this matter, have a report on this matter brought to the council meeting?
Report on
grant on applications for grant funding.
Yeah, on a report on how grants are currently
On the process of doing it. We need to either that or have the grant policy brought back to us.
Well, we already have a grants policy, huh?
Well, according to the CEO, we do.
We will have this.
So I think what we've got to do is vote on this motion, is that right? The existing, we've got a mover and a seconder, is that right?
That's right, it's in the control of council members.
Yeah. So we've got a mover and a seconder with Kev's original motion.
That's been changed though, hasn't it?
I'll
The
keep
original
that
motion.
bottom one, that was his original.
See, that's not the motion, I second it.
Take that.
I'll take all this out.
There's been no formal amendment of that motion, so that's the motion before council at the moment.
Okay. Those in favour of the motion? Okay, motion's defeated unanimously. I don't think it's in our interest to try and develop a motion at this moment now. I think we need to think about it more. That's my personal view, but councillors want to put up another motion. Try again.
Mr Mayor, I will say that I think this topic is an appropriate topic for a workshop because it's totally within council's powers to adopt and amend the grants policy. It would be impossible without having a discussion in a workshop for officers to draft a policy for your consideration when we have no real view on what councillors think about the policy. So I think a workshop in this case is very appropriate so that we can get feedback, go away and draft a policy for council's consideration.
Councillor Clifton?
I'm just looking in amongst our. I can't find it's the wrong wording. I suppose it'd be something beside a grants policy, but there's nothing current that tells me that there is a grants policy. I'd be keen to see it urgently.
So what's the view of council? Where do we want to go from here? Councillor Cargy?
Yeah, I'm happy to leave it alone at the moment and discuss it through a workshop.
Is everyone okay with that? Okay. Is there any more business without notice? Okay, I believe we're done. Meeting closed. Councillors, I would